All right, time to talk the Illinois side of Illinois and Maryland, and probably a little less game focused, Joey Wagner, because this is a big picture kind of week, maybe the rest of the season for Illinois football after what we saw at Nebraska and what we've seen through 6 games this season.
Yeah, it's like I'm not going to spoil your preview and picks or what you picked or whatever, but usually Jeremy's got this long, in-depth, and we're kind of to the point of the season where I think we know what teams are until proven otherwise. And there's a lot of big picture conversations that should happen around this team, just given the way they performed in these first 6 games. And there's kind of is what it is at this point, right? I will say, and I'm curious your response to this. I don't want to, it's just to get a little bit game focused before we get into our six pack. I don't want to say like this is Penn State 21 because I don't think the outcome is going to be Penn State 21. I don't think that's a hot take. But I do think there's some value for these guys who are living in this bubble of fair arrows that are being thrown to just get the heck away. Yeah. Like going east, secluding with one another, getting away. Is that going to lead to a win? I don't think so. But I do think there's value. I'm getting a little bit of Penn State 21 vibes. Like you go out east after you're kind of left dead in the water after 6. I think they were coming off of a bye week going into that game. Brett Bielema was coming under scrutiny for all the offensive line comments. And I don't know. Like, I don't think it's going to be that. But I do think there are some parallels there to just maybe trying a fresh start for the back half of this season and seeing what happens.
Well, and that's to your point. I think there's still things to play for this season, even if it isn't what you were expecting to play for, a Big Ten West championship. And let's be honest, unless they win against Maryland or Wisconsin, it's hard to see a bowl game, right? So, but they still have those opportunities. But my point is that team was 2-5 going to Penn State. And they ended the year with upset wins over Penn State, Minnesota, who was ranked at the time, and they crushed Northwestern. And you just felt better about the program and where it was going. There's still opportunities to end this with a competitive season, Joey. Like, be competitive, win a couple games, and we'll get into our confidence at the win games, but there is still something left to play for those guys in this program, for these coaches, these players. And there's 6 games left. So it's not out of the question that they go on a little run here in the Big Ten West and Indiana on the schedule, but they can't do it with the way they're playing. So let's start our 6-pack of questions. Brett Bielema said Friday changes would need to happen after starting 2-4, 0-3 in the Big Ten. Obviously, staff changes did not happen, but what do you think these changes will be? And I guess let's just start addressing that elephant in the room, Joey. There weren't staff changes. And you zoom back, and you realize how difficult that could be mid-season, right? Because who are you promoting if you change offensive coordinators after 6 weeks? There's no Jim Leonard analyst for the offensive side of the ball right now.
A change there is a voice change, not a schematic change. That's what mid-season changes are. It's a different voice, maybe 1 or 2 new ideas, but you're not wholesale schematically changing who you are, what you do. You're not changing personnel. It's all about the voice in the room.
Yeah, and to do it in 6 days is tougher. Even if you did that, even if you did a voice change, like a bye week would make more sense, right? Like that's what Indiana did. They had 11, 12, 13 days to kind of prepare themselves for Rod Carey taking over, who's been a head coach and coordinated an offense before. That makes more sense. And Illinois doesn't have a bye week for 2 weeks. So what kind of changes can we expect, or can fans expect?
I think you look at, we're talking offensively, right? Like that's just to be clear, that's the purpose. I don't personnel changes. You're 6 games in. Like your personnel is your personnel. Could you get more young wide receivers in the mix of Malik Elzey, Kanari Wilcher, Ashton Hollins? Sure. Like I think those are on the table. But I think you saw a little bit of that peeking its head against a bad Nebraska team. You like these dropbacks, these long developing routes, like those, you just can't pass protect. You that's just not who you are right now. It's not your strength. Like, are these changes more quick hitters? Just getting, and you got to have your quarterback operating that as well. Getting the ball out quickly to just try to establish some. I dove in the numbers on IlliniInquirer.com, but some momentum after that opening drive and before halftime. So like our quick hitters to answer. I think there's a lot of value still in developing the run. Like this team is not built to drop back and throw the ball 40 sometimes. That's just not. Brett Bielema's teams aren't built that way. This offensive line isn't built that way. The wide receivers aren't built that way. So I think changes, If you look at it, it's probably, if not schematic, just tendency changes. Run the ball more, be more effective on the ground. I think those linemen need some of that confidence to move people, to get some running going. Now,
to Barry Lunny's defense, he's tried that.
That's right. And they're down. Like the score dictates a lot of that.
You know, Isaiah Adams can talk about it. Some of the offensive line, we're a physical football team. I haven't seen that. I have not seen that. I can't, maybe it's just less pulling, so there's less movement up front and like straight back and just go and push people. But I haven't seen that. I don't think that's a strength of this team right now. So while I understand the desire to run, they haven't been able to do it. Like,
and they're down their top 2 backs entering the season.
Yeah.
Potentially with Reggie Love. It didn't sound optimistic there.
So I don't know if it's anything different that we haven't talked about. 12, 13 personnel. We saw some more tight ends. To be honest with you, some of it didn't work. Griffin Moore's fumble, Henry Boyer's missed block, Griffin Moore's drop. We saw a quarterback sneak, and then we saw why they don't do that. Luke Altmaier is listed at 200 pounds. I don't think he's 200 pounds. Your interior is not all that physical and imposing, right? And getting a push. We saw Feagin a little bit more. We're going to see more of him this week. We'll get into that. You saw Ashton Hollins. I'd like to see him play a little bit more. I think Malik Elsey's been really up and down when he's been on the field, so I don't think he's a solution. But I'd like to see a little bit more of him. But it comes down to simply they have to execute better. And that's on the coaching staff to call the plays for, but it's also on the players. Like that Isaiah Williams, shovel pass should have been a touchdown. Those got to get executed. Jay Lehman broke it down in his film review, Joey. Like Reggie Love, Kaden Feagin had some opportunities to get first downs on those short yardage. Their vision wasn't there. Like those things have to be executed. But also Barry Lunny has to know what he has. And I'd like to see a little bit more of the RPO game. Luke Altmaier's got to make better decisions. And that's where it's getting into. It's like all of these things have to get better. And we're going into game 7. But my biggest thing is you got to finish those first drives. And you got to stop getting into lulls after those first drives. Like the first halves are just killing this team.
Yeah, it's a complete – there's never momentum, right? Like this team, I don't think we've seen this team play with sustained momentum for even 3 or 4 drives.
Never feels like they've gotten cooked or cooking, and it feels like they're never going downhill, right?
That's right. And I think points – and we've heard it, right? We've heard it from the coaches. Like points on that opening drive, there's a reason Brett Bielema, and you can make an argument he should have gone for it at Purdue. He wanted the 3 on that opening drive. Very, very fair reason to just go for it and try to get it. But there's value to points. But it's those – I mean, the numbers are out there now. I'll put it out there. I think it's 8.4 plays and 54 yards average on opening drives this season. And it's, I think, 4.8. Those numbers are way too similar for me to think those are specifically right. But it's no more than 5 plays on those the rest of the drives of the first half, not including kneel downs, and like 24 and some change yards. That is a drastic difference. Now, it's execution on some of that. It's drops. It's offensive line issues. It's sacks. It's decisions here or there. It's play calls. But like that has to you just don't sustain anything going into halftime, save for maybe like a 2-minute drill at the end of half where you get something. There's just that middle portion of the half is just empty. It's very, very empty.
Well, and I think the point to the offensive coordinator goes, listen, I think everybody that is rational understands there's personnel limitations here, but it's his job to figure out how to put them in best positions to succeed. And every week, listen, I love talking to Barry. He's brutally honest. He takes blame. I think he does a good job when he has to talk to us, but every week it is a broken record and he understands it because he keeps talking about the same issues and feels like they're not doing anything very much different, at least to the naked eye. You can see little things, but it feels like this team doesn't believe in the offense right now. So it's a big 2 weeks, I think, for Barry Lundy to figure this out. And it's not easy against Maryland and against Wisconsin, 2 teams that I just don't know if Illinois can score enough points to compete with, because those are 2 really good offenses at this point of the season. So they got to figure it out. And Brett Bielema said they went over personnel, they went over scheme, they went over play calls, they went over all that stuff. We'll see if it leads to anything.
You know what's interesting? It felt like after the Penn State game, and this is a take that hasn't aged very well, I think you and I were of the opinion like, hey, this offense might be close to something.
I thought Fort Atlantic too.
Yes.
Penn State, you go back to that. I thought the play calls were actually pretty good. Luke Altmaier had the terrible day, right? FAU, they just need to finish some of those drives, some of the turnovers. but I thought the play calling was really creative. There were some trick plays. The downfield shots worked. Granted, it was FAU. And even Purdue, some of that first half I thought was positive, just finished drives. Nebraska was ugly, just ugly.
Yeah, from the get-go. Right. I mean, after that first – I feel bad, like weird saying after that first drive, because the first drive was so telling in the way that it ended, and it kind of set the tone for everything. But they were effective in getting the ball down there on that first drive. They overcame a penalty before the first play even got snapped, right? It was set back 5 yards. And at that point, like that's where you are with the offense. That happens, and you're like, oh boy. Okay. Oh boy. But they figured it out.
And that's why this offense needs a good first drive ending with points again at Maryland. Like if they get
ending with a touchdown, Jeremy. Like let's say they've got to get it in the end zone. They've got to feel like they can get over that hurdle and get in the end zone on those opening drives. They haven't done it since week 1. Like they've got to get in the end zone. They have to start fast that way.
If they got into 4th and 1 at the 10, you think Brett Bielema was kicking the field goal or going for it? I think he's kicking the field goal. I think you need something positive.
That's a good question. Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know.
Doesn't matter.
Because no, I can make up 1,000 scenarios in which he goes for it and 1,000 in which he says, the heck with it. Put some points on.
My solution for the offense, just give the ball to Isaiah Williams more because he's the one consistent and he's a really good player.
Mighty bold take of you.
That's it.
You're right. You're right. Isaiah Williams doesn't have a touchdown this year.
That's a problem.
That's unfathomable. That guy has got to be put in positions to get in the end zone.
More red zone touches for him. Number 2, Josh McCray out for the season with a neck injury. No surgery, no details on what that is, but out for the season. Reggie Love likely out this week. So that means Kaden Feagin and Aidan Laughery are the top 2 options at running back. Behind them, it's Nick Fidanzo, who Thad Ward recruited the first time he was here at Illinois and has played some defense in his time here. So, Joey, what do you expect out of Kaden Feagin and Aidan Laughery, Central Illinois' finest, as Brett Bielema said?
What do they need or what do I expect? I don't know. I think they need a lot out of those 2. I think they need to run the ball. How much expectation can you put on a true freshman and a redshirt freshman on the road against a team that looks like it would win the West, maybe going away if it were over there? And it's one of the 4 best teams in the Big Ten. I think that's reasonable. You could say top 5 and then put Wisconsin in the mix. I don't know how much expectation is fair to put on them, but I think they should have opportunities. I think, can they maximize those? I don't know. Kaden Feagin has had flashes, albeit in a lot of garbage time. I think the number is like some north of 70% of his yards have come with already decided games. But he looks like the parts. I thought Aidan Laughery, when he ran that touchdown against FAU, you're like, oh, that's different. Like that. The twitch, the speed, the burst, all those things were different. He's still learning to play running back in college, I think. I think that's a fair thing to say. But they need it from them. I don't know if you go in there, if you want to harken back to 21 Penn State, I don't know if you can look at these 2 and hope to get a fraction of what you got from Chase Brown and Josh McCray. If you can get a fraction, if you can get 50% of that, you probably leave pretty happy, right?
Yeah, I'm looking up the game log of that game because
McCray went for 159.
Right, was Chase Brown hurt that day? Did he leave that game?
That's right.
Because he wasn't
because that opened the door for for Josh McCray, right?
I think so. No, Chase Brown had 223 yards that day. 223
that wasn't embarrassment. Cut this out. It's 13, 30 to 13, 14 cut out.
I forgot they ran for 360 yards that day. 2 guys with over 140 yards that day. Just because you remember Josh McCray. That's what I remember the most out of that game. But for me, this Maryland defense is better than advertised. They're allowing just 3.2 yards per rush right now. And this is a challenge for these guys behind this offensive line. I think Kaden Feagin's going to be on a lot of the passing downs because Aidan Laughery has struggled pass blocking. Feagin's been a little bit better. I want to see 15 touches for Feagin. I want to see what it looks like when he gets that amount of carries. And I don't want to be afraid to use him. And Jay Lehman said this earlier in the podcast earlier this week. You don't have to just go inside zones and dives with him. I think he can stretch it a little bit. And that's what I want to see with Laughery. Listen, this guy was a high school track star when he was healthy in high school. I want to see some stretch zones with Laughery like we saw at Chase Brown. I want to just see if he has that burst because on kickoff returns, I haven't seen it. On the one run against Florida Atlantic, we saw it. But Aidan Laughery, I think, has zero carries against Power 5 opponents in his career. Like, all of his carries came against Chattanooga last year, 3, and then Florida Atlantic, 3. So this is a huge spot for him. And I just want to see.
Why is that?
That's because I don't think they trust him quite yet, right? And I want to see what he has, if he is this speedster or if these injuries had set him back. But I just want to say I don't expect a lot of success out of these guys, to be honest with you, behind this offensive line against this opponent. One thing I do want to see, Joey, along with these guys, you got to run Luke Altmaier more. He's got to be part of this, whether it's zone reads, whatever it is. I think you got to put those guys in conflict. And if you want to run the ball, I think Luke Altmaier's got to be a big part of it.
If I set for those two, Laughery and Feagin, and again, we'll get an update from Brett Bielema tomorrow. Sounds like Josh McCray, as of Monday, didn't sound very optimistic to see him.
Reggie Love.
Thank you. Yes, Reggie Love did not sound very optimistic to see him. So if I set for Laughery and Feagin 64.5 combined, what do you do?
Over.
Oh, I said a good number. Look at that.
That's a good number.
Look out, Vegas.
Boy, I don't feel confident. I don't know.
I mean, but like that's kind of the state. Like just to zoom out a little, like that's kind of the state we're talking about here. Like for two guys, 64.5 in a Bielema offense, like that should be a hammer the over, right? But that's just kind of what we're talking about. This Maryland defense, where this line is, the inexperience back there. I think if you got 85 combined out of that is a pleasant surprise. Like you would feel pretty good moving forward if you're Illinois from that.
Says a lot about this year. Number 3, Brett Bielema sounded optimistic earlier this week about Zy Chrysler and Josh Geske. I always say wait and see on that. But if one of those guys, two of those guys return, what would that mean, Joey?
I mean, I feel like obviously it would help. And we know those two haven't had perfect seasons, right? Like you can't get around that. I would look for maybe Zy Chrysler over Josh Geske just because Geske didn't even pretend to dress last week.
Yeah.
He came out, he was not dressed to start with. Zy Chrysler was dressed, and then obviously he was a game time to not go. That would indicate to me he's further along, but it would go counter to what we thought leaving Purdue. But I think that's probably a fair assessment just given what we saw a week ago. So, I don't know. It'd help. I think it'd help. I think you're seeing that there's not the depth that everyone dreams of having behind your starters. My question is, if Geske can't go, what do you do? Because I thought Hunter Whiteneck, for the most part, played better last week. And I think he's probably been challenged over the course of the last few weeks by the staff to really and stepped up and rose to that challenge for the most part. Purdue wasn't very pretty. But are they both right guards, right? Like, can one go to left guard? I don't know. Like, I think that's an interesting dynamic. Or do you just go with Jordan Slaughter at left guard?
Yeah, I think we're seeing like Brandon Henderson was not going to be a magic bullet here. Jordan Slaughter was not. He's not been better than Zy Chrysler. Just put that out there. Zy Chrysler is more physical. Just Zy's got to be more consistent. Hunter Whiteneck was solid last week. Didn't think he was great. The stunts continue to be an issue for this team. So I expect Slaughter to start at left guard. I expect Chrysler, if he's healthy, to play at right guard. But man, if Slaughter struggles, especially in the run game, can Whiteneck play left guard? I'd like to see it. I'd like to see that big physical group up front because that's like outside of Josh Kreutz, that would be a massive lineup of offensive linemen. And I just think they need to get that physicality back. Like that has been lacking up front all season. I know Josh Kreutz has it. He's just not a big guy, but I just want to see that more than anything. Like you can screw up some technique things, pass pro. Listen, they got to be better, but get a push up front, win some one-on-one battles. Illinois just has not been doing that like they did the first year of Brett Bielema. So I got to see better communication and chemistry. At some point, you do want to see this group communicate better on these stunts. But they just got to run the ball better. More physicality at the point of attack. That's what I want to see. Yeah,
I think when you say physicality, I think that goes hand in hand with a little bit of swagger.
Yeah.
Like I think those two things are paired very much together and what this system is and how these guys operate. You start getting that, you start feeling it a little bit. We just hasn't optically looked like this line has had kind of that, as they say about Josh McCray, like rolling the shoulders. Like I just don't know that we've seen that very, very much this season.
Number 4, why has the pass rush been underwhelming this season? You caught up with Charlie Bolin.
Yeah, I think, we've seen those linebackers, those outside linebackers in particular, drop back into coverage. It feels to me, and I don't have the numbers to back this up, and it's half the season for 13 games, like they're doing it more. And I think they're very conscientious of trying to change the picture for quarterbacks.
That's a big phrase this week from all these coaches, from Aaron Henry, Charlie Bowen. Change the picture, confuse. And hey, I do like that. Ryan Walters did this stuff too. But there are key third downs and fourth downs where they're rushing 3. Sometimes we could be cherry picking that stuff, but it's just by the eye test. Even Jay says it. They're not being as aggressive on those downs.
You know what I think helped change the picture a year ago? Sidney Brown. Sidney Brown could change the entire picture by himself. And you could let those outside backers go and let them get upfield. And I wonder when if that's gonna come back, where it's just the all hands on deck go, because Johnny Newton has 24 pressures this year. So it's an unbelievable number. I asked him the art of it today. He said his hands, Tank Wright calls them his hands the holy water, and he needs to bless the people. I almost cursed. Awesome quote.
He's been awesome. He's not been getting the sacks, but his disruptions should be getting other people sacks. Like he's just getting the hockey assist for this, and it's not happening because other guys are not winning their one-on-one battles. Keith has won a couple, but the other guys just are not.
They're not, and I think you see that. And the outside backers aren't always winning their one-on-one battles either. Right. So it's not just like, they're dropping them back, and that's the only reason. Like those guys need to play better too.
The blitzers too. The blitzers have to win more of them. I think James Kreutz has done a pretty good job. I think we're seeing Rosiak really emerge here recently. They are dropping into coverage more. That's part of it. And they're dropping into zone coverage a little bit more, which means they're rushing 3 or they're rushing 4, and you're just not getting as many one-on-one battles. We also got to acknowledge teams are not passing as much because they're not down against them. They're always ahead. Power 5 teams, all but 6 minutes, are either tied or ahead of Illinois. But I just think
that's a huge piece. Like we shouldn't gloss over that. That is a really, really big and really important piece to this.
But there is the issue of, like, I just do not see Gabe Backus, Seth Coleman, some of the other defensive linemen winning their one-on-one battles as much. And whether that's technique or play calling, I think the staff has to figure it out, because they can point, as Charlie Bowen did, to stats against Nebraska. Nebraska's awful. They're awful. And Harburg is not a good player. Like, he's not a good passer. He's a good player against Illinois, made some key throws, a good runner, but he is not a good passer. So I just don't put a lot into those numbers of that one game. But they are not winning enough one-on-one battles against Purdue, Kansas, whatever it is. And against Maryland, they need it. Those guys have to be last year good to have any chance of beating Maryland.
Yeah, you can't give him all that time in the pocket with the talent that he has, the system they run. That is a recipe for total and complete disaster.
Number 5. We're going big picture now, Joey. Over under wins rest of season, 1.5.
People are going to be like, how'd you get to this? I think it's over. Like, dude, Northwestern is not very good. Indiana is not very good. Minnesota is not very good. Illinois, not very good right now. I get that. I do. I really do. You get Northwestern and Indiana at home for whatever in the world that's worth. I don't truly know how much it's worth. You should beat those teams. Like, you are still in year 3 of Brett Bielema. You still have next level talent on your roster. I think, like, I would feel very weird taking the under. You're grinning. I don't know if you're going to take the under. Oh, no, you're going to. You're going to.
Well, I will play. I can see a path to them winning 3 more games. I really can. But I just haven't seen it. I have not seen that team that has that path to 3 more wins on the season. I would take the under right now because I think they're better in Indiana. But are they better than Northwestern? Are they really? I don't see it right now. I think they can be. I think they'll have a lot to play for in that game because it might be, playing for the biggest thing they can take home, which is a rivalry trophy. I think they can beat Minnesota if they play a clean game. I'm not that impressed by Minnesota. We haven't seen that all season.
That's right.
Listen, Iowa's not going to be that impressive. I think Illinois' defense should give them an opportunity to beat Iowa. But what makes me think they can score on Iowa? And what makes me think that this offense can score and keep up with Wisconsin or Maryland? Like, I think the defense can be competitive and give Illinois a chance to win 4 or 5 more games this year. I don't think it'll be consistent enough to do 4 or 5, but I think the defense is going to give them opportunities to compete in games. I don't think the offense can. I just haven't seen it all season.
That's fair. That's fair, right? Like this is a legitimate conversation. I don't know. Yeah, maybe I won't age very well in going over, but like to think this team should beat Nebraska or to beat Northwestern in Indiana, like that is not a hot take. You are in year 3 of your system. Like that should be the minimum expectation.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like what signs offensively, other than they gain yards sometimes in bulk, other times very much not in bulk, but they don't score.
That's right. Yeah, like this offense can move the ball at times.
The yardage thing is interesting because like it's very bulk. It is very Sam's Club offense, right? Like they get a lot at once and then really, really, really nothing for like 4 or 5 drives. And then a lot at once to close off the half. And then really, really nothing. And then a lot at once at the end of games.
Just to hit on what we're talking about, Illinois is 7th in the Big Ten in yards per game. 7th. Like they can move the ball. Like they have long drives. They don't score on those drives. That's the problem. Is Illinois is 13th in the Big Ten in scoring. Like, so they just do not turn all those yards into points, which is the whole point of offense. So that's why if you want some kind of little nugget that, hey, maybe this team could turn a corner if it just converts on these 3rd and 4th downs, if it just finds the end zone instead of turning it over on downs or turning it over. That's it. They have been able to move the ball at times, but they just haven't been able to score. And then they turnovers put their defense in terrible situation.
And hey, let's also be honest here. The defense doesn't help them at times with some of these 3rd down conversions either.
Yeah.
So rather than maybe trying to go out there and get another crack at it, you say maybe 1 or 2 more possessions and a half, right? If you get off the field on some of these 3rd downs over the course of 6 games, I'm not talking every game, then maybe you have more opportunity, but just the inconsistencies of this offense in terms of execution, in terms of play calling, in terms of just not turning the ball over. The turnovers are outrageous. The sacks are outrageous. The sacks fall on the line. The sacks fall on Luke Altmaier. All of these things are true. But, man, it's just been no hint of consistency or momentum with this offense.
Yeah. All right, let's do another big picture question here. I think both of us know, and I think the staff knows, the transfer portal is going to be huge for them this offseason. And NIL is going to be huge for Illinois, for every fan talking about that. Yes, name, image, and likeness dollars is hugely important in acquiring talent nowadays. Now, you're having a bunch of guys that are going to go pro. That should free up some of those dollars that you have for those guys. But like they need to be more aggressive in going after some of those guys. And they need to be able to get through to fans that, hey, we need to raise money for this. I'm not going to tell people how to spend their money. But if you want to be a good football program these days, like this is part of the talent acquisition process is NIL. But let's break down what are the top transfer needs this offseason. Can I give you my top 4, Joe, and you tell me if I'm wrong?
Can I guess your top 4 and you tell me in the order? Can I guess the order of your top 4?
Well, I got a little twist on this, so if you guess it right, I'm going to be surprised, but go ahead.
Oh, that's fun because that makes me think you have quarterback somewhere in the top 4.
A quarterback is on my list further down, but it's got a twist to it as well. But
you got more twists and defensive fronts against Illinois.
That's right.
So number 1, offensive line.
I had defensive line number 1.
So offensive line is number 2 for you.
Yes.
I'm guessing you have running back in the top 4.
Running back is on my list, but I'm playing a trick on you. I have one off.
We're wasting a ton of time. Just name your top 4.
1 defensive line, 2 offensive line, 3 defensive line, 4 offensive line. There are 4 of my top 5 is offensive line and defensive line.
Can you just humor me and tell me 5 and 6 so I can see if I was anywhere close?
I had running back and wide receiver both written down because like wide receiver changes. Get Isaiah Williams back. Speaking of NIL, Isaiah's probably a day 3 pick or undrafted free agent. I love the kid. Like I love the talent. I think he's got a chance at the NFL. Can he run a under 4.5 40? That's my big question with him. Because I think he's faster laterally than straightforward. But if you could get him back for another season, I think that'd be massive. But running back is on my list because Reggie Love, I think we've seen when healthy, is a solid guy. I think he'd be a great number 2 running back. I think Kaden Feagin has a bright future. Is he going to be ready for 200 carries next year?
And 6 games might tell us that. Tell us yes or no.
And let's be honest, Josh McCray, haven't seen it in 2 years. Aidan Laughery, haven't seen it yet. He's going to get opportunities. but that position needs to be better because I thought they would have a good group by committee. It has not been a great group by committee. And that's a sell. I think you need to sell Chase Brown. So I think you need to sell what they can. I thought it was potentially a place you can upgrade last year. You got to look for upgrades now. You can't just hand this to whoever and just say, yep, it's your job. I think you need to look for some of those upgrades. And wide receiver would be in that list for me because if you do lose Isaiah Williams, I think Pat Bryant can be a good wide receiver, but got to add competition. I think Malik Elzy, you'd obviously count on Hank Beatty, Kenari Wilcher, but add some competition there.
Can we talk about Isaiah Williams? Because I was going to actually text you this on my way to the stadium today, but we may as well just talk about it here. You said day 3, to undrafted right now is where you would see the range. What is the ceiling for him? Because like with Johnny, right, he wasn't getting the feedback, and you could talk him in to coming back and climbing up into that first round, which I think we've seen as a reality. Where's the ceiling? Like what? If you're pitching this to Isaiah Williams and say, we want to develop you and help you, there's going to be an NIL aspect, climb you up there. Like how far do you think he can climb?
For me, it's not even, I don't know about draft stock, Joe. It's about, we can give you more money than the NFL can. Like we will give you more money than the NFL will for the next year.
But I think the pitch has to come with, we think we'll put you in a position in a year from now to make that money. So what's the ceiling? How much do you think you could pitch to climb him up those boards?
I don't know if like that's my whole, I'm kind of telling you, like, I don't think it's like a Johnny Keith situation where it's like, we're going to get you 2 days up higher. Like,
sure,
Johnny, you're not going to go 4th round. You're going to go 1st round next year, which is probably going to happen. Keith, you're not going to go 7th round. You're going to go 4th round or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the pitch to Isaiah. I think it's, listen, this could be life-changing money for you, for your family. And then you can still get to the NFL. Well, you'll be better. You're going to get better here. You're going to go down as a legend here. Education is really important to Isaiah. This community has been really important to Isaiah. Those are the things you're pitching. Now, maybe he just wants to go pro, right? Like Kofi Coburn, you just want to go. But Isaiah's going to have his degrees and all that. So, but I would seriously, if I'm Illinois, he would be my priority with the NIL, because I think having him as part of your offense with Luke Altmaier for another year is hugely valuable. And then you go fill out your offensive and defensive ones.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Because my truthful pitch when I was thinking about this was I don't know how much higher you're going to get than a day 3 pick, just given you mentioned the straight line speed limitations that we think he has, his height, all those things. You can make a pretty penny coming back to college at Illinois. You can go down. I don't know. I know he's number 2 in receiving. I haven't looked completely at what the gap is.
He could set the record for receptions at Illinois, for receiving yards at Illinois. I mean, David Williams put up astronomical numbers, but Isaiah would do it in 6 years, but at 4 years as a receiver though, right? Like, so he would still, he could go down and do some of those things. I don't know how important that is or how much value that has, but yeah, offensive and defensive line.
Is Isaiah Williams' decision equal to, in your mind, the Isaiah Adams decision? Is that the best comp year to year?
No, because Isaiah Adams was.
Because I didn't think Johnny had a decision. Like, that was a very big surprise to me. So is it Keith?
No, I think it's a completely different decision. I think it'd be more like Trent Frazier. I think it'd be more like that, where it's like, listen, I don't know if you're up in your stock, but hey, you got another year. And you can, like, Trent, I don't think could make money at that time, but like Isaiah, you can make more money in college and pros. And I think it was kind of the pitch that Kofi Coburn had. It's kind of like, you can make more money here. It's more stable. You know where you are. You can be the big man on campus for another year. But Kofi wanted to go pro, and I do not begrudge him for that. But I don't know if Isaiah or Kofi were going to up their stock. But Zach Edey came back because probably making millions of dollars because it was better for him. It's like he can make more money now than maybe he'll ever play playing professionally.
Yeah, and I think we should also clarify, like, in all this, we're not saying Isaiah Williams does not have an NFL future.
No.
Like, I think this guy does, and I think he's going to have a chance. And if he's not drafted, he's going to get into a camp. I think all the intangibles that make him who he is going to give him a heck of a good chance to find his way somewhere. Maybe
I'm off, and he is a 4th rounder or something. And if that's the case, go, right? But if he's like a 6th, 7th round guy, I think that's a real conversation. But yeah, I think, Joey, we're talking about next year. I have defensive line ahead of offensive line because at least I know some guys are playing on the offensive line this year. They got to get better, but you have some talent underneath with Brandon Henderson, Hunter Whitenack, and I don't think TJ McMillan plays next year, but you have some guys, Desmond Schuster, you hope to play next year. Defensive line Your top 3 defensive linemen next year are Sed McConnell, Denzel Jackson, and Alex Bray. That's why it's number one. Like you need at least one no doubt starter, and I think one guy who can push for a starting job at the very minimum. Offensive line, you need probably one starter at tackle, which is the hardest to find, and then I go find another guy who can compete for a job on the interior, whether it's guard, center. Don't care who's there right now. Force competition, try to upgrade.
That's very reasonable given what you've seen, and like I think Brett Bielema knows like momentum. I know Jay talked about it's very hard to get, and I think he knows that. I think you got to put yourself in any position to try to get that back, and that. But by our read of where this roster is and where the gaps are in terms of age or whatever it is, like that momentum, if you're finding it, you're probably finding it in the transfer portal this offseason.
The outside linebacker, I don't think the talent is the problem. My problem, the production. Linebacker, I like what you've seen out of the younger guys. Could you upgrade? Sure. But I think Rosiak, Krutz, Odaluga, I think you can win with those guys. Corner, I mean, Taz comes back for another year. You know, I really like Xavier Scott. I think he's a really good player. But Toby, Kareem, I expect to take some leaps. You hope some of those younger guys, like I like the talent there. Safety, Matthew Bailey comes back. Demetrius Hill comes back. Miles Scott comes back. I would look to upgrade potentially free safety, in my opinion. And you probably need some depth at safety regardless because Matthew Bailey coming back from an injury, Nicario Harper and Clayton Bush are gone. So I would expect some depth at the very least there. The other one, we can bring it up, quarterback. I think Luke Altmaier is good enough to be your starter long-term. He needs to improve, that is for sure. But he has shown me the talent that I think he can be the starter. I wouldn't mind adding a young transfer who can create competition and also depth. Like, because if Luke Altmaier gets hurt, John Paddock's gone after this year. We'll see. I don't know what Donovan Leary is yet. I don't think Cal Swanson's making an impact next year. Trey Petty, a freshman, are you going to play him next year? Probably not. So it's hard at quarterback, but I would not be opposed to looking for a younger guy who can up the talent and competition there.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And yeah, I know you were at that position in particular about ruffling feathers, but you gotta do what you gotta do, right? And we don't know. Like we don't know what Donovan Leary looks like. We know he's not the second quarterback on the roster right now. He's also a redshirt freshman, so it's probably reasonable.
Yeah,
that's more than reasonable. But I do think that's an interesting dynamic to see how they approach that this offseason.
All right, time for picks to click, Joey. And offense, we did not do well last week, just like Illinois did not.
I don't want to. We talked before this about opting out. Let's just do it. Let's just go. Let's not opt out. Let's pick someone.
You picked Feagin, which I love the pick. And I was between Bryant and Casey Washington. If I just would have not listened to you and take Casey Washington's first touchdown, which didn't happen.
I don't know why you've ever listened to me. I would not do that.
Pat Bryant would have won, actually, because he was one of the few bright spots in that game. So, Joey, at Maryland, who is your pick to click for the Illinois offense?
All right, let's just opt out. God. Tip Ryman? We can't pick Isaiah. So Tip Ryman? Did I take your pick?
If I take Isaiah, can you take Johnny Newton? Is that fair?
Can we just throw out the rules we made in the first 6 games?
Yeah.
No Isaiah. You've got to pick in the non-Isaiah Williams category.
All right. If I took Isaiah Adams as an offensive lineman and his 4th, 5th started right tackle, what would his PFF grade have to be? 65? Like if I got
65, you'd be good.
Let's do it.
And I think he's played better. Like, yeah. I do. I think he has played better. I did ask Bart Miller. I don't remember which NFL game I was watching at some point in the last few weeks. But they talked about just going left to right and how it's a mirror. Like you mirror everything. And I just asked him about, is it just a reps thing? Is there anything you can do? And to Isaiah Adams' credit, like maybe you saw that in those first snaps moving right, but like you haven't really seen a lot of that out of him. I think as far as acclimation goes to right tackle, could be worse.
His guards have not helped him. His guards have not helped him. He's lost some one-on-ones. He certainly has. Everyone sees those, but there are some guard issues for him as well. I think he's been much better in the run game lately. I think he's been better in the pass game. He's been a serviceable right tackle. It's just you wonder, in hindsight now, would you have just been better off with keeping him on the left side and having one good side? and the other side just figuring it out. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I think if you would have said that after Kansas,
Right.
watching Zy Chrysler struggle mightily at right tackle, I think everyone, including what we've seen, the coaching staff and the subsequent moves they've made, would say absolutely not.
Right.
I don't think there's the issue. I think that you come down to, you have more ready to play guards than you have ready to play tackles right now, and that's tackles are hard. Tackles are hard to find. You can't just throw them out there forever. Now the ready to play guards aren't changing games, right? But like, I think it's, the lesser of two, right? Like what, I don't know. Like it's a very hard decision. But I think it's clear that they don't feel like they've got the ready to play depth. Mountis Moeller is traveling with the team. I don't know. I think he's probably shown improvement over the course of the years, but like it's 2 years, year and a half. But it's clear, like
He's still got development.
Yeah, which was known.
Looks great. But yeah, he's still got development too. He's an emergency tackle on the road. That's what he is right now. I think Brandon Henderson would probably play before him at tackle, but he's probably just not ready for that, being on an island like that. All right, defense pick to click. Last week, Joe, you took Keith Randolph. Do I win with Dylan Rosiak?
Oh, yeah.
That was a good game for Dylan Rosiak.
Dylan Rosiak played well, which makes me want to take Dylan Rosiak, but I'll take Xavier Scott.
That was my pick.
Take a breath. Go outside. Pause this. Go outside. Get a little breath of fresh air. It's all right.
Scott's been sneaky good the last couple of weeks.
And like, if you look at like targets and receptions, like those numbers aren't like, they're not. They don't jump off at you, but like that's a position that's targeted a lot, and you're going to give up catches at that position because slot receivers are hard to cover. But he has been good. He's been good. He's had mistakes. He didn't play his best game against. Was it Purdue?
Yeah.
One game, I think it was Purdue or it was FAU. They had the stud.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't play his best game.
I didn't mind him against that guy. It wasn't terrible, but yeah. At Purdue, he was good. Nebraska, he was good. FAU was his worst game so far. But that was probably the best player he's played, yeah.
I think he's been – like you look at those guys who like in a year or two, and I know no one wants to look that far, right? Because like you want to win now, and you're in year 3, and you feel like you should be in a position to do that. But he and Matthew Bailey, assuming health, like they give you those spots where like, all right, you got some dudes back there that are going to take some time. And I think you're seeing him start to find that footing now, and that's really encouraging.
Yeah, and then you feel good about the young talent. Like Zach Toby, he's going through growing pains. Sabor Kareem played a little bit, but those guys are really talented. Like they've recruited that position well. It's a very young group right now. Man, you took my guy. Now who?
Take Dylan Rosiak again.
Let's go.
Are you going to go with anyone on the defensive front? Because this would seem to be a game. I'm just giving you ideas since I ruined your day, possibly month.
I took Gabe Akis heading into Purdue, and that did not end up very well for me or Illinois.
It is really hard. I'm rambling at this point. It's hard to understand that the two starting outside backers have one combined sack. That is really, really hard to understand.
And not very many pressures. The outside linebackers, I think you did this too, but I did the other day, 2.8 pressures per game. Last year, they were close to 6.
That's not all scheme, right? And it's not all – that's the thing. It's not all scheme. It's not all execution. It is somewhere in the middle of both, and it's led to an underwhelming start first half of the season. It's not a start. That's crazy too. It's not a start. It's the first half of the season now.
I took Rosiak last week. Let's go with Kanena Odeluga. I think Rosiak's been playing better lately, but let's go with Kanena Odeluga. Maybe Illinois' best pass rusher right now outside of Johnny Newton.
One of holy water hands.
Maybe one of them. All right, you got anything else, Joey, before we head to DC?
Still waiting on some recommendations from people. Food, museums.
We got to pick a museum that we want to go to because probably got one in us.
Well, it depends on how the napping situation goes. My 3:30 a.m. alarm.
That's right.
And no one cares, but you asked me, you want to fly out at 8 or do you want to fly out at 10? I said, let's just do 8. Let's just do 8. That sounds fun. And we're like, all right, be here at 5:30. I thought, can we reverse course? Can we do 10?
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, there's really good museums. I sit here and I go, man, the one I wanted to do most was Newseum, which is now closed. It was a great media museum. Cost $20 to get in back in the day, but it was the best museum in DC. I'd feel like, man, the Holocaust Museum there is phenomenal, but do I want to put Joey Wagner through that on an afternoon in DC, or should we go to like the Spy Museum or something like that?
Okay, I just pulled up top 10. What a way to end this. I don't know how long ago.
Top 10 museums. Let's get the list. Go.
Smithsonian.
I think I've been through there.
National Gallery of Art.
That does not sound like us.
All right. Air and Space.
That sounds like us. I would do that.
That could be cool. The Holocaust Memorial. Museum of African American History and Culture. National Portrait Gallery. Ford's Theater. National Museum of American History. National Archives Museum. Hillwood Estate Museum and Gardens. Those are the top 10, and 11 is the Spy. I'm not going to do that because I don't feel like good podcasting and radio is reading from a list. So
I love lists. We should do a segment.
So those are the 10 TripAdvisor options.
Well, I am game for whatever since this is your first trip to DC. So I will let you do that, but I will try to figure out where we can eat dinner, Joey.
Maybe some breakfast food. If we can swing some breakfast food upon landing, I would be welcome for that.
Airports usually have that. Joey Wagner, see you bright and early Friday morning, man.
All right, man. Appreciate it.